Story 1. The Stranger at the Lake House, Hook. It started as the perfect summer getaway. 3 friends, a secluded lake house, and a week of freedom. But one night, a stranger appeared at their door, and everything they thought they knew about safety vanished. By dawn, one of them was gone, and the other 2 would never see the world the same way again. It was the summer of 2017. The kind of summer that felt endless and golden, when 3 college friends, Ethan, Marcus, and Ryan, decided to escape the chaos of campus life. Finals had ended, internships hadn't started, and the 3 of them were desperate for freedom, for a week away from emails, roommates, and the constant hum of city noise. The plan was simple. Rent a small cabin by Lake Tahoe, a rustic getaway tucked between towering pines and the still, glassy waters of the lake. They had scoured dozens of rental listings online before choosing this one. Pictures promised wooden porches, a fireplace, and the kind of isolation that made social media look irrelevant. The drive-up was filled with music, laughter, and the kind of chatter that comes with relief. They passed endless stretches of forest, winding roads, and small towns that seemed frozen in time. By the time they arrived, the sun was dipping below the mountain peaks, painting the sky in molten oranges and purples. The cabin was even better than the photos, a wooden exterior, the smell of pine everywhere, and the lake reflecting the sunset like a sheet of broken glass. They threw open their bags, cracked beers, and started planning the week. Fishing, swimming, late-night bonfires. Everything seemed perfect. But summer nights have a way of hiding things. The first night was deceptively quiet. Inside the cabin, the 3 friends settled in with a deck of cards. Outside, the woods were dark and unnerving. The silence was not just the absence of sound, it was heavy, almost tactile. Even the usual chorus of crickets seemed muted, as if the forest itself was holding its breath. Around midnight, as they laughed over a failed poker hand, a knock at the door shattered the illusion of safety. Knock, knock, knock. All 3 froze. The road to the cabin was isolated, at least a mile to the nearest neighbor. Ethan crept to the peephole and squinted into the darkness. A man stood there, tall, with messy hair, a pale face half hidden in a shadow. He didn't move, didn't smile, he just stared. "Who is it?" Ethan called, trying to keep his voice steady. The man's voice was low, calm. "I'm lost. My car broke down. Can I come in and use your phone?" Marcus whispered sharply. Just don't." Ethan hesitated. Something about the man's stillness made his stomach churn. "Sorry, man. We can't let anyone in. We'll call help for you in the morning." The man didn't argue. He just stepped back, disappearing into the shadows. They tried to laugh it off, but the laughter was hollow. Sleep came fitfully, haunted by the image of the stranger's unblinking eyes. Morning brought no relief. Ethan woke first and noticed the front door was ajar. He had locked it himself. Inside, the house looked normal, nothing stolen. But the fridge told a different story. Packs of meat, bread, even some of their beer were missing. Someone had been inside. The 3 debated leaving. But the rental was expensive, and no one wanted to cut the trip short. They convinced themselves it was a prank, a misunderstanding. But unease lingered like a fog. That evening, Marcus spotted footprints near the tree line leading directly to the cabin. No footprints led away. Ryan's face went pale. "That guy's still out there," he whispered. They bolted the doors, killed the lights, and tried to convince themselves it was just the wind, the shadows. But Ethan heard breathing outside his bedroom window. Not the gentle rhythm of animals. It was deliberate, patient, and terrifying. Sleep was impossible. Day 3, tensions escalated. Ryan wanted to leave, Marcus dismissed it as paranoia. Ethan, torn, suggested they stay one more night before deciding. Night fell. Then came the knocking again. Louder, faster. Bang, bang, bang. The calm voice returned. "Let me in. I'm cold. I'm hungry. Just for a little while." Marcus shouted, "Go away, or we're calling the cops." Then the doorknob rattled violently. Locked. Ethan had locked it himself, and the knob twisted back and forth, as though manipulated by someone with a key. The house fell silent again. Morning revealed the terror's aftermath. Ryan's backpack was gone, vanished from inside the house. On the porch railing, carved with something sharp, were 3 chilling words. "Let me in." Marcus panicked. He packed his things. Ryan agreed. Ethan reluctantly followed. But the stranger wasn't done. While Marcus loaded the car, Ethan went inside for the cooler. Then he heard Ryan scream from the trees. He ran outside. Ryan was gone. Marcus swore he had seen him walking toward the tree line, drawn as if by invisible hands. They called his name, shouted, searched. Silence. Hours passed. Darkness swallowed every sound. Night fell faster than they expected. Inside the cabin, Marcus paced while Ethan sat near the window peering into the black. Then he saw it. Ryan standing just beyond the porch light, his clothes torn, eyes wide and unblinking. Ethan shouted, but Ryan didn't move and didn't speak. Behind Ryan, the stranger appeared. He placed a hand on Ryan's shoulder, whispered something, and Ryan smiled. The last thing Ethan remembered was Marcus rushing to the back door trying to escape. Glass shattered. Footsteps pounded inside. A whisper too close to his ear. "You should have let me in." Days later, police investigated the cabin. Inside, the place was abandoned. Bloodstains on the floor. Words carved over and over. "Let me in." Marcus and Ryan were never found. Ethan was discovered wandering barefoot along a mountain road miles away, clothes torn, face gaunt, eyes vacant. He never explained what happened that night. Only words repeated over and over. He was already inside. Story 1. The Stranger at the Lake House. It started as the perfect summer getaway. 3 friends, a secluded lake house, and a week of freedom. But one night, a stranger appeared at their door, and everything they thought they knew about safety vanished. By dawn, one of them was gone, and the other 2 would never see the world the same way again. It was the peak of summer 2019 when the Henderson family decided to take a road trip across Nevada. Mark and Lisa Henderson, along with their teenage children, Sophie and Jake, were eager for adventure. National parks, desert vistas, and long stretches of open highway where the only sound was the hum of the car and the occasional song on the radio. The day had been long. They had left Los Angeles early in the morning, navigated winding roads, and arrived at the Nevada stretch just as the sun was starting to melt into the horizon. The desert stretched endlessly on either side, flat and unforgiving, dotted with cacti and the occasional abandoned building. Sophie, 17, was the first to notice the rest stop, a small, lonely structure beside the highway with a flickering neon sign that read, Desert Oasis 24 HRS. "Let's stop," she suggested, pointing to the bathrooms. "I really have to go." Mark sighed but agreed. They pulled into the nearly empty lot. Only a few cars were scattered across the cracked asphalt, headlights fading into the approaching dusk. The building itself was old. Paint peeled off the walls and the fluorescent lights inside buzzed with a low, constant hum. The air smelled faintly of cleaning chemicals, dust, and something metallic. Sophie went inside first. As she stepped into the restroom, a chill ran down her spine. The fluorescent lights flickered intermittently, casting distorted shadows across the tiles. She shook off the feeling, thinking it was just her imagination, and began washing her hands. Then she heard it. A whisper, so faint she almost didn't catch it. "Help me?" She froze. The restroom was empty. Her heartbeat pounded in her ears. "Must be the wind," she muttered to herself. But the voice had sounded too clear. She stepped back toward the door and found a shadow in the corner of her eye. She turned quickly. Nothing. Her parents called her name and she hurried out, forcing a laugh to hide her growing unease. Outside, the family noticed something odd. Across the lot, there were no other people. The few parked cars were old, dented, and appeared abandoned. Not a single employee was in sight. Even stranger, a faded map of the area showed that this rest stop was at least 10 miles from the nearest town, in the middle of the desert highway. Jake, 14, grinned. "Looks like we're in the middle of nowhere. Cool." Mark forced a smile, but felt the weight of unease. There was something off about this place. The shadows in the corner of the lot seemed darker than natural, as if the light itself feared to reach them. Night fell quickly. The desert darkness pressed against the rest stop, isolating it from the world. Inside, Sophie couldn't shake the memory of the whisper. She tried to laugh it off, but every time she heard the fluorescent lights buzz, it reminded her of that voice. The family decided to eat snacks in the car before continuing their journey. As they ate, Mark noticed movement in the periphery. Something moving between the cars, a figure barely visible, darted from one shadow to another. He squinted. Did anyone else see that? Lisa nodded slowly. "Yeah, I thought it was a trick of the light." Sophie shivered. "I heard someone whispering." Before they could process it, the car doors locked automatically. Not manually, not electronically, it just locked. All 4 doors. Panic rose instantly. Mark tried the locks. Nothing. The engine wouldn't start either. The vehicle seemed trapped, surrounded by the desert and shadows. Then came the sound. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate, circling the car. No one was visible. The footsteps seemed to move in impossible patterns, appearing on the roof, then beside the doors, then behind the trunk. Sophie clutched her mother's arm. "They're outside. They're watching us," Lisa whispered. "It's probably some pranksters," but her voice lacked conviction. Suddenly, a tapping at the windows. Something pressed a long, pale finger against the glass. Not human, or at least not entirely. The eyes in the shadow above were black, too dark, unblinking. Jake screamed. Mark tried to start the car again, pounding the ignition. Nothing. The footsteps grew louder, then silence, so sudden that the world seemed to hold its breath. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. They lost track of time. Eventually, the family dared to peek outside. The lot appeared empty. Cars still abandoned. Only the neon sign flickering weakly against the night sky. No footprints, no evidence of anyone's presence. Relief was short-lived. On the dashboard of their car, written in the condensation from the AC, were 3 words. "You can't leave." Sophie screamed, and Mark tried to stay calm. They huddled together, whispering, trying to figure out what had happened. The desert stretched endlessly, silent but for the occasional rustle of dry wind. The next morning, desperate, Margaret tried the car again. This time it started. They drove off without looking back, hearts racing, adrenaline flooding. For a moment, they felt safe, until they checked the news later that day. The local Nevada station had a segment on missing persons. Over the past 5 years, at least 12 people had vanished in the same stretch of desert. Each disappearance traced back to that rest stop. Security cameras never showed anyone outside the building, just empty asphalt and shadows. Mark and his family never spoke of the experience again, but Sophie would sometimes wake up screaming, whispering the same phrase she had heard that night. "Help me." The rest stop still exists by the highway. Travelers pass it, rarely stopping. Locals avoid it entirely. And sometimes, when the neon flickers just right, a lone whisper rides the desert wind. You can't leave. Story 3. The Campground Horror. 5 friends thought a summer camping trip in the Oregon forest would be the adventure of a lifetime. But at night, something watched, something whispered, and one by one they disappeared. The last survivor can't stop saying the same words. They were watching us the whole time. It was the summer of 2018 when 5 college friends, Hannah, Lily, Derek, Jason, and Mia, decided to escape the city for a week-long camping trip in the forests of Oregon. The forest was dense and ancient, with trees so tall that sunlight barely touched the forest floor. They had packed their tents, sleeping bags, and enough food to last a week. Excitement buzzed in the air as they drove deeper into the woods. Cell service was non-existent, and that was the point. They wanted to disconnect, to truly experience nature. By late afternoon, they found the perfect clearing. A small stream ran nearby. Birds chirped faintly in the distance, and the forest stretched endlessly in all directions. They set up tents, gathered firewood, and lit a small campfire. The first night was magical. They sat around the fire, roasting marshmallows, telling stories and laughing. But as darkness settled, an uneasy feeling crept over them. The forest, which had seemed alive and vibrant in daylight, now felt watchful, almost sentient. Around midnight, as the friends lay in their tents, they began hearing strange noises, soft whistling, rustling, like footsteps moving through the underbrush. Derek brushed it off. "Probably just raccoons, or the wind," he said. But even he didn't sound convinced. Then a shrill whistle echoed through the trees. It was human-like, but carried a tone that made their blood run cold. Mia shivered. "Did anyone else hear that?" Hannah nodded. "It's coming closer." Jason, trying to be brave, grabbed a flashlight and stepped out. The others followed, but the beam revealed nothing, only dark trees, shadows shifting unnaturally. Suddenly, a branch snapped behind them. Jason spun around, but again, nothing was there. The forest seemed to move around them, closing in, reshaping itself. The next morning, their tents had been tampered with. Zippers partially undone, footprints in the dirt surrounding each tent, and some of their food had disappeared. It was subtle but unmistakable. They tried to rationalize, wild animals, maybe a deer or a bear, but the precise placement of the footprints made them uneasy. The prints looked almost human. Despite the events, they decided to continue. They hiked along the stream, exploring deeper into the woods, trying to shake off the paranoia. But as the sun dipped below the horizon that evening, the forest presence became oppressive. Around the campfire, shadows seemed to move on their own. Whispering carried on the wind, unintelligible, yet urgent. That night, Jason went to fetch water from the stream. He didn't return. Hannah, Lily, and Derek called out, their voices cracking with panic. Minutes stretched into an eternity. Then a scream echoed from the direction of the stream, piercing, desperate. But it wasn't Jason's voice. It was something else, something inhuman. They rushed to the edge of the stream but found nothing, no sign of Jason. Only the faint imprint of footprints leading into the forest, vanishing abruptly. Fear gripped them. They debated leaving immediately, but it was already dark. They were trapped in the heart of the forest, surrounded by watching eyes. The forest didn't allow them to leave. Over the next 2 nights, strange events escalated. Their tents were slashed open. Food went missing again. Strange, distorted whispers followed them wherever they went. Each night, one of them disappeared, first Derek, then Lily. Hannah and Mia were the last ones left. They barricaded themselves in their remaining tent, shaking, whispering, listening as footsteps circled the campsite, sometimes stopping just outside the tent flap. On the final night, Hannah woke to the sound of Mia screaming. The flap of the tent ripped open. Pale figures moved through the shadows, their faces obscured, their forms almost indistinguishable from the trees. Hannah ran blindly through the forest, calling for Mia. Every tree looked the same, every shadow hiding some unseen predator. She stumbled and fell, the darkness swallowing her. When she woke, it was dawn. She was alone. Miles from the campsite, clothes torn, scratches lining her arms and legs. Her mind was fractured, memories of the forest fragmented. All she could recall over and over were the whispers. They were watching us the whole time. Rescue teams eventually found her weeks later. She could barely speak, repeating the same words over and over. The forest was searched, but nothing else was ever found. The campsites were empty, untouched, except for the faint marks in the dirt, like footprints that had vanished into nothing. The disappearance of her friends was never explained. The locals whispered that the forest was cursed, haunted by spirits or creatures that preyed on anyone who dared to camp there. Travelers now avoid the area, especially after nightfall. And sometimes, when the wind is right, hikers report hearing faint whistling, soft footsteps behind them, and whispers that seem to come from nowhere. We are still watching.